Imagine an asset where one of the functions inherent to that asset is a perpetual loss in value, which is meant to be steady and predictable, and where there is no fixed supply and nothing to stop the Federal Reserve, or the European Central Bank or the Bank of England from printing as much money as they feel is necessary at any given time. And imagine that you could borrow and use this asset for almost nothing. In other words, the asset is so plentiful that borrowing is virtually free. Well, that, my friends, is the nature of the US dollar and actually many other government-issued currencies as well. And if I were to try and pitch an investment to a group of investors, or indeed a group of school children, and tell them that the investment that I was selling is designed to lose value over time, the response probably wouldn't be very good. But as soon as the term US dollar comes into the equation, a lot of people begin to think about safety and predictability, and they think that owning dollars is a risk-free venture. Most people do not consider that the dollar isn't just money, but it's also an investment as well, and that it can change in value like anything else, especially in an environment where interest rates have been artificially suppressed for so long, and excessive credit creation as well as simple money printing is now standard economic policy. Nobody in their right minds would want to own any more than was absolutely necessary, but in fact a lot of people hoard and save dollars as if they were intrinsically valuable. And that term intrinsic value is very important, because it refers to the value of something independent of its value in its current use. In other words, what value can be derived from using that thing in and of itself. And the US dollar isn't backed by anything of value, and it has no naturally occurring value other than the paper. Yet this asset has a market capitalization of over $30 trillion, and every single penny is based upon nothing more than belief in that currency and belief in the asset. The main argument in favor of the dollar is the currency argument. A lot of people believe that because a currency is merely a medium of exchange and not designed to be a store of value, that a currency does not need any intrinsic or independent value, so long as enough people believe in it. And in all fairness, this argument is valid to a certain extent, but across human history, of the hundreds and thousands of currencies which have been employed in various areas at one time or another, only those which have an independent value have survived. If we think about gold, probably the most widely used currency historically, and one which is still valid today, gold has survived because of its independent value, and its use in the jewelry industry and in dentistry and increasingly in hardware. And if the currency argument were valid, it would mean that anything which creates enough believability can be a sustainable currency. And this argument alone would mean that the US dollar would have a long way to fall, because it would mean that any cryptocurrency which satisfied the basic requirements of a medium of exchange could be a long-term viable currency, and there are thousands. And not only this, but many actually have better transaction times and lower fees and incorporate better privacy as well. And in fact, many cryptocurrencies are what are called utility tokens, which are specific to a particular platform which provide a real-world blockchain-based service, and the intrinsic value of the currency is intertwined with the value of the platform, which would in many cases make certain cryptos far more attractive than dollars on a purely utilitarian basis. Until recently, the US dollar has managed to hold onto its position as a dominant currency, in my view because of the lack of alternatives and the lack of communication and access to information, which has meant that most people didn't and still don't understand that there are now alternatives, and that the value of the dollar is being eroded by poor economic policy, and 2 decades of using short-term thinking and tactics to postpone an inevitable correction in the asset markets. A lot of people think that the stock market and real estate markets are booming, and considering that the economies of the USA and the UK and many other countries as well have been effectively turned off in large part over the last year, it doesn't make any real sense. But actually, a lot of what seems on the face value to be gains in the real value of stocks and property are not gains in their value, but rather losses in the value of the fiat currencies which people are selling in exchange for them. During the early 2000s, the stock market in Zimbabwe was booming in nominal terms, and anybody looking at the prices purely at face value would have been astounded by the huge gains every single day. But actually, they weren't really gains, they were losses. The rising nominal prices were simply a reflection of the falling value of the currency that the stocks were valued in. When measured against the dollar or the pound, or gold or silver or copper, the losses were substantial. But now it seems as if to a much lesser degree we are seeing the same thing in the USA and the UK. With consumer prices rising and asset prices rising yet faster, all in economies which have been severely impacted due to the pandemic. The economic fundamentals do not line up with what is happening to asset prices right now. And to me it's fairly clear that asset prices are not rising out of optimism for the performance of business and the wider economy in terms of increasing output, but rather the prices of assets are rising as people are leaving the US dollar behind in favor of anything which they feel has the ability to increase in value with inflation, no matter how stretched and low the yields are. And the type of economic policy which is driving this behavior is not a temporary thing. Interest rates have supposedly been due to be normalized for a decade now, yet we are at the lowest rates ever here in the UK, and things are of a similar tune elsewhere in the world as well. And so I for one think that the economic conditions causing an exodus in the US dollar and the pound and others are likely going to intensify over time. Thanks for watching.